door in the back so we can get started. Where are people up front? All right, come on up. Don't be bashful. Okay, welcome to the Rivers Coalition meeting for the October, and we want to get started. So I'm Mark Perry. I'm the director at Florida Oceanographic Society, but also the president and chair of the Rivers Coalition. Some of our board members are up here. Please raise your hand also if you're other board members that are sitting in our seats. There's Casey and others. There's Ed in the back. And if you're a member of Rivers Coalition, raise your hand. Hey, great. Thank you, member organizations. We have over 100 member organizations. We're sending around a sign-up sheet. So there's a clipboard there and a clipboard here. We'll send that around to get everybody signed up so that Mickey can take attendance official. But we appreciate you coming today. We have quite a bit on the agenda, but we were expecting to have Colonel Bowman from the Corps coming, but he had to back out because of the government shutdown. They're pulling everything back on all federal agencies, including Corps of Engineers and their visits. So we're hoping to get those updates at the next meeting coming up in November. So we'll kind of go for that. In this meeting, we've got an agenda item. We put Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission and their management of special aquatic plants on Lake Okeechobee, particularly in face. I saw some of this presentation at the Okeechobee Coalition meeting, which was really good. But we have a lot of concerns and concerned citizens here at the meeting about this issue. So it's relevant to what goes on in our estuary. So we're excited to kind of cover that. I do want to get us started. So the first thing we do is we have stand and help me pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. We are appreciative of City of Stewart again and allowing us to host our meetings here. We also have, I think, I don't see in the city commissioner, yes, Chris Collins is here. Any other city commissioners I'm missing? We also have with us today County Commissioner Eileen Vargas and Sarah Hurd. Sarah and Eileen are here. Thank you very much for attending. And any other government officials I messed up, forgive me, but they may be online. We have online, how many we have online, Todd or Daryl? About 15 or so join us online. So it's good that we have those virtual capacity. You might angle it a little bit more. There you go. There you go. We can still see it up here. That's great. Yep. So just kind of opening up some comments and kind of, about that before we get our presentation started. We've had some water quality issues in the estuary, mainly from the basin runoff from our St. Lucie estuary. And I'll be talking later about, how we're trying to work with the agencies and update you on BMAPs, the Basin Management Action Plans for not only the St. Lucie estuary and River Lagoon, but also the Caloosahatchee estuary and Okeechobee. And those three watersheds are all tied into the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan. And there was a big presentation at the October 9th governing board meeting for the Water Management District. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have here, is Sherry here from the water management? Yes, Sherry's back in the back. She's our local rep from the district, and we can talk about that when we get to those updates. I also wanted to let you know that I've reached out to the Port St. Lucie Public Works and also say, please silence your cell phones or you get fined $85. I think it's a fine. Just kidding, just kidding. But thank you. Yeah, the Port St. Lucie Public Works, I'm reaching out to them as well as the St. Lucie County Public Works. And we're trying to get them, invite them to come as well as Martin County, City of Stewart, and others to kind of update us on those stormwater projects and projects around the St. Lucie estuary that help our water quality and give us updates on that. So we're reaching out to them as well as the other agencies like the Corps, the district, FWC, FDEP to try to get them to participate. It's really important that we all, our coalition members and everybody hear from these agencies and what's going on. Okay, so we get right into our presentation today. This is Alex Dew. He's with the FWC Aquatic Invasive Plant Management Program. And he's going to give us a talk on aquatic plants, and then we'll have some Q&A right after that. I think we have time for that, so we'll move right over to Alex. Can you hear me? Are you on?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, and I shared my screen if you can confirm that you can see that okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Dew. I'm with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and I'm here to give a presentation on our aquatic invasive plant management program with a special focus on some of the work we're doing on Okeechobee. All right, so our aquatic plant management program, I'm the admin for the program statewide. It covers the sovereign submerged lands, that's our lakes and rivers, our state public lakes and rivers in Florida. And the eligibility criteria for that, for funding for our program, is that there's public access, so a public boat ramp, and that it's state sovereign submerged lands. That accounts to 465 lakes and rivers across the state, and it's 1.26 million surface acres of water. All of that is surveyed every single year by our biologists who are stationed around the state to cover all of these waterways, and around 350 of them receive active management every year. So there are plants that need management on 350, give or take 15, 20 every single year. And down in your region, this is what our regional biologist in the area covers, Lake Okeechobee, and you can see some of the other resources around there, like the Loxahatchee River, Fish Eating Creek, Kissimmee River, and others. So this is pretty typical. We have 15 to 20, give or take, biologists around the state that run their own region. All right, so before I can really get into how we manage, I need to go into why we manage plants. And sorry, this is in the way. So biological invasions are the second greatest threat to biodiversity after land use change. And what that means is the only thing that causes more extinctions than biological invasions are when you lose habitat. So when areas are developed or there's land use change, like converting natural areas to agriculture, those are the only things that cause more extinctions. So pollution, overharvest, poaching, climate change, none of those cause more extinctions than biological invasions. So how can moving a plant from one side of the world to the other side of the world cause so much damage? And the reason really boils down to the fact that plants have chemical defenses, and every plant is unique. So what that results in is the majority of the insects that are out in the world specialize to eat certain plants. In fact, 91% of plant-eating insects can only eat from a single plant family. And you've probably heard this concept before when people are planting butterfly gardens. They'll say, oh, I need to plant milkweeds for the monarch butterflies, or I need to plant passion vine for the Gulf fritillaries. What they mean by that is that monarch caterpillar can literally only eat milkweed. That's it. It can't choose to go eat some other plant that's brought here from somewhere else. Same with the Gulf fritillary, they can only eat passion vines. So if another plant comes in and outcompetes that passion vine, well, that species goes away. Here's kind of an example of what that would look like. So on the left, you have your invasive plant that's come here from somewhere else across the world. In this example, I used alligator weed. When it gets here, there are very few things that can eat it. So it's keeping all of that energy to itself, and it's spreading out more than a native plant would, and it's growing denser than a normal plant would, and it's not passing that energy up through the food web to wildlife. But then you have something like a native beetle, like we have for alligator weed, where it's from, and that eats the plant. And now everything that eats the beetle or its larva or its eggs get to receive that energy, and it passes up through the food web. And you also have some control put on the plant from the top down to keep it in check and keep it from spreading all over the place and outcompeting our other plants. So you might think, well, I don't really care about bugs. What's the big deal? Well, if you like birds, you should care, because 96% of North American terrestrial birds rear their young on insects, and most exclusively on insects. In fact, when you put your feeder out that has seeds in it, they cannot feed those seeds to their young. They can't digest them. They need insects. So if you're going to have insects, you have to have the plants that produce those insects. And even other animals that you wouldn't think about, like bears and foxes, get almost a quarter of their energy from insects. With some of the invasive species that we see in Florida, you can see this example pretty clearly. If you think about Melaleuca, highly invasive in Florida, they have only ever found 8 species of insects that eat it. And most of them eat a little bit of the leaf and then move on because they can't really digest it that well. Whereas in its native range in Australia, there are 409 species that eat Melaleuca, and it's a threatened plant in its home range. I mean, that's, for a Floridian, that blows your mind that Melaleuca could be a threatened plant if you've ever been out there and see what this plant can do. And it's because it is actually pretty busy in its home range, passing that energy up to other species. Another example, Hydrilla, in its native range, they've identified 423 species that eat it. And you can see the difference between these two pictures. The one on the right is in Florida. That's a much different growth pattern. There are only 15 species that have ever been identified to eat on it. Half of those are biocontrols that we've released. And when you go out there, you're probably not going to find those biocontrols because a lot of them weren't that successful. If you pull up a clump of it, yeah, you might find some snails on there. You might find some gnats, but you're not going to find 423 species that are eating this plant. And that's why it is able to grow like it is in that picture. It's not passing that energy up through the food web. It's keeping it to itself. So just to recap that, the bottom line is that when you move a plant across the world to a new location, the things that eat that plant, that are relying on that plant, do not come with it. So in its new range, it's able to hoard that energy to itself and also outcompete all the native plants that are there because they're busy supporting wildlife and passing that energy up. And when it outcompetes them, well, now you've run out of a lot of food sources for wildlife, and you've lost all the specialist interactions that are associated with that. All right, so how do we manage? We have different tools that we utilize, and I'll just run through this list on the screen here, starting with the left. Mechanical methods, this is where you take a harvester, an aquatic harvester, or an aquatic shredder, and you go in, and you can see in that picture there's a conveyor belt on the front. It's scooping up all the vegetation, collecting it in the middle, and you can either haul it off site, which is usually quite a challenge, but we're able to do that in some situations, or you can put it on an island within the lake. This is good for large mats of vegetation and other situations where you have consolidated material and you want to get rid of all of it. This isn't a very selective method. So if you have invasive plants peppered through native plants that you really want to keep, that's not a good option because you're trying to keep those natives. You don't want to be pulling them up and taking them out of the lake. Physical methods are things like fire or drawdowns. These don't control invasives per se, but they are important aspects of the natural fluctuations that would have occurred before humans came to all these areas, and it makes our ecosystem more healthy. So if we can get drawdowns of our lakes and get that natural cycling going, then we'll have a much more resistant, robust, healthy native ecosystem that can resist biological invasions a little bit better. They're still going to come, but it's much harder for a plant to invade an area that is in really good shape. Biological, I just kind of talked about, but this is where you go out to a plant's home range and you find the things that are eating that plant. You bring them back here, you put them in quarantine, you test to make sure that they can't eat any Florida plants. And if they can't eat any Florida plants or other plants in the US, then you're allowed to release it. So the one in that picture is the beetle that controls air potato. It only eats air potato. And you're basically reuniting the plant and the things that eat it by bringing them from its native range. And then chemical control, which is the use of herbicides to control the plants. And I'll go a little bit deeper in that one because that's often the most misunderstood and controversial method that we use. So one reason why chemical control is so widely used and it's an effective tool is because it's selective. We have lots of options. We never have a silver bullet that works in every situation, but we have lots of options where one plant does not have a receptor for that herbicide, but the other one does. And in fact, in this picture, you're seeing someone holding up a dead water hyacinth amongst a nice native, healthy plot of native spatterdock. So the spatterdock, the lilies in this picture that you're looking at, are the native plant that we want to keep. And all the brown in that picture on the right are the dead water hyacinth. That's because we were able to use a selective herbicide that only works on the water hyacinth and not the spatterdock, because we want to promote those native plants to keep growing. And we want to make sure that the water hyacinth aren't continuing to grow and crowding out the spatterdock. So you're able to do that selectively. Some misconceptions that we hear a lot of times is that people think, oh, these herbicides, you put them out and they just kill all the animals. They are tested extensively to not harm aquatic organisms, and they are labeled by the EPA and then the Florida Department of Agriculture. They have to pass both of those entities to get a label to ensure that they're not toxic to those organisms. And then sometimes people think that you do a treatment and it goes down in the sediment, and a year later, it just comes back and everything dies. That's not something that happens, that it would not be able to be labeled if a herbicide worked in that way. It has to have a half-life demonstrated where it's breaking down and turning into inert compounds, or they will not label it. All right, so our management philosophy is called proactive management. Some people often hear this referred to as well as maintenance control. And the concept's pretty simple, but it's backed up by 6 decades of science. You want to control populations when they're small, like the picture on the left. You see some of these floating plants in amongst all these cattails. You want to control them at this level before it gets to the situation like what's on the right. What you see on the right, there's 6 foot of water under those plants in that picture. You can see that there are no native plants left. It's just fully become water hyacinth. And now that applicator has to go in and treat this entire area, when the preferred method is to go in when they're small, get ahead of it, and you use less labor and less herbicide. And most importantly, you don't let the plants get to a level where they're damaging our native plants. That's what we want to avoid. And just a great example of why this is so important. In 2019, from February to April, our program did a pause where we stopped operations for 3 months. If you look at this graph on the right, you see a yellow line at 500 acres. On Lake Okeechobee, it's considered that you're in good shape if you're under 500 acres of floating plants lake-wide. We were there. We were down around 250. We paused for 3 months, and you can see on the green line how the levels shot way up, and they were beat back down and still blew up again. beat down, blew up again. It took 3 years to get it back to a consistent level of being under that 500-acre goal. So 3 months of pausing took 3 years to overcome and get back down to a level. And during that time, we had to spend a lot more money, use a lot more labor and a lot more herbicide to get things back under control. Just some research on this concept. UF in the 80s did an experiment with this. They took tanks like what you see in that picture on the left, and they put 10 hyacinth in there. And they said, okay, on some tanks, we're going to let them get to 5%, and that's it. Then we're going to treat them. Some 25, some 50, some we're not going to treat it until it fills up 100%. The ones that they only let get to 5%, they had to treat 8 times over the experiment. And the ones that they let get to 100, they only had to treat twice. But they used 2.5 times more herbicide if they let it fill up to 100%. So the one where they only let it get to 5 and stayed after it, they used much, much less herbicide. And this is what we've been doing on Okeechobee, and we've gotten a lot better at it. Here is our herbicide use over time. You can see 2025, this is through September, so most of the year is already recorded there. We're using a historic low amount of herbicide, and we have historic low levels of floating plants on the lake at this time. Another thing from that UF study that they discovered was if you keep levels low, you deposit less muck. So here's the 5, 25, 50%, and 100% tanks again. And you see that muck levels, if you let them grow to 100%, are way higher, 5 times higher. And the reason for that is, yes, when you kill plants, you're putting them to the bottom, they're dying. But what a lot of people don't consider is the fact that a living plant is actively growing all the time. So if you look at the picture on the left, you can see all those brown leaves coming off that plant. This is an untreated plant. It's actively growing. What these plants do, especially ones that are out in full sunshine, like what these would be on a lake, they're putting out a new leaf, photosynthesizing with that for a while. It gets old, they drop it off and make another new leaf. I mean, you'll see this in your yard with some of your trees, or you see pine leaves on the ground around your pines. You can see this concept with pretty much any plant, but especially the ones that are fast growing, you really see it because they shed a ton of leaves. So if you leave them out there to keep growing, they're going to be dropping these leaves all the time, and that's going to be creating muck. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, our native plants are being consumed at rates that these aren't. So a lot of our native plants' energy already made it up into a bug that made it into a bird. These plants, it's mostly the plant material that is there because there are far fewer things eating them. So that's just going to be dead material that goes to the bottom at a higher rate than our native plants. All right, zooming in on Lake Okeechobee for a second. Just wanted to go through this past year and where we're at. Like I said, we're at historic lows for our floating plants. We've had an average of just 37 acres present lake-wide in 2025. This is a 448,000 acre lake with over 100,000 acres of marsh, and we only had 37 acres on average. In August, there were 62 acres. I think in September, it went up to somewhere in the 100 range. Normally by then, it's up really high. The end of summer can be brutal. Having 62 acres in August is just amazing. And we're treating, because we're so on top of the plants right now, we're treating far fewer acres. If you see that table in the gray down there, you can see at the bottom in 2020, we treated 8,800 acres. And last year, we treated 3,000 acres. This year, we're on track to treat even half of that. So we're doing good at the moment. I just wanted to focus on some of the restoration for a second, and in particular with this plant that some of you might be familiar with. It's torpedo grass. So torpedo grass was introduced in the US in the early 1900s, and already by 1950, the University of Florida was warning people that this is a very serious weed. When it's established, it's very hard to get rid of, and it grows from the littoral area of a lake, sometimes even further out, all the way into up the bank onto dry soils. So it can really transform large areas of the lake, and it did. So from the 90s to 2017, there were about 16,000 acres present of torpedo grass. And if you look in that picture on the bottom left, that's an example. That's not a football field. That's not somebody's backyard. That's Lake Okeechobee. That's just a monoculture of torpedo grass. There was some treatment going on by FWC and the South Florida Water Management District throughout all that time, but still in 2019, we had 10 to 14,000 acres present. So we weren't really making huge strides. And then our local restoration biologist, y'all might know her, Alyssa Jordan, came up with a new strategy for a management plan for this species. And she really, really reduced the levels, and we're having great outcomes. So compare what you see on the left in that picture to what you see on the right. That's the kind of transformation that is occurring. We're getting our shallow marshes back with these treatments and turning back into a nice native assembly of native plants. So there were 3,000 acres managed from 2019 to 2023, and then that got ramped up last year to 7,400 acres just in that year. So we've treated about 10,000 acres so far, and the results are really great. So these are all areas that used to look like that other picture on the last slide. And now, like I said, we're getting our marshes back. And some data surrounding that that's really important. You can see on the left just one polygon, that what's outlined in blue with the yellow dots. They just looked at one of these areas, just 1,000 acres of this restoration. And in that one area, this was, I think, 2 years after this one was done. This was the first block that was done, I believe. Just 2 years after it was done, they found 61% of all the foraging wading birds in the entire lake were just using that 1,000 acres. They were there. And then they also looked at snail kite nests at that time, and they found that over half of the nests were within that proximity, and they were using that area as forage. Half the nests that were present on Lake Okeechobee, just around that one block. And since then, they've been looking at their other areas as well, and found that over 3/4 of the snail kite nests occur within a mile of any of these restoration sites. So it's really important work. And yeah, I'm really proud of our staff for making these achievements. All right, a little bit about interagency coordination. This is a very big lake, and we work with the South Florida Water Management District and with the Army Corps of Engineers on various aspects of the lake. For the aquatic plant management, we share zones. We share areas of the lake for areas of responsibility, whether it's FWC or the Corps. So zone 1, 2, 3, and half of zone 4 is the Army Corps of Engineers responsibility, and we have the rest of the zones. There's a task force that meets bi-monthly. And I'm sorry, this one says the next meeting is September 30th, because this was from a slide when I gave this presentation previous, but they meet every other month. And it comprises of federal, state, and university representatives. There's a list that you can see there on the slide. And if you're interested, they do have a newsletter. So if you want to take a picture of that email address, you can email her, and she will put you on the list so you can stay updated. There's an interagency lake flight that occurs monthly where they fly around the lake to see what the levels of invasive plants are around the lake. That's FWC, the Corps, the district, sometimes DEP, and sometimes they bring out some contractors so that they can see what it looks like from the sky as well. And then we also have FWC and Corps coordination calls every month. And this includes people up in Tallahassee like myself, all the way down to field staff. And we coordinate what's going on around the state with both of our programs. And then on the lake, our local biologists they're in coordination every week, sometimes daily. So this is just a snapshot of all the coordination that occurs to keep great management on this lake. All right, finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about contractor oversight. We've made some good strides in this in past years. So one of the things that we have implemented, we piloted it in 2020, and we went full statewide in 2022, is putting GPS units onto our contractors' boats. And we have these on herbicide application boats, harvesters, shredders, and pretty much any equipment that does work for us. And then any of the helicopter work that occurs, they already have systems like this that are part of their setup. So it's pretty simple. It's a GPS unit that is one of the fleet tracking designs. You see these in taxi fleets, truck fleets, and it sends out data through cell network to a centralized database. So you get to see everybody in real time. And this is hooked up to what you see in the picture on the right, that little brass fitting. Inside of that, there's this little paddle that opens up when liquid comes through. So we know exactly when spray is on and spray is off. So we know exactly where our applications are occurring. And what it gives us is something that looks kind of like this. You see a blue travel line. So we get to see where the applicator went. And then every time they pulled that trigger to treat something, that's where you see these little purple blobs. And like you can see in the picture, you can hover over any of those. And on this one, they sprayed that patch at 10, 20, and 28 seconds. All right, and just a few misconceptions that I like to go over regarding our contractors and our program. One is that we often hear people think that contractors are paid by the gallon. That's not correct. They're paid by the hour. So whether there's a ton of work to do in terms of spraying, or if they're just sent out to do like what you see in on this map, where there are just a few plants that we're trying to get ahead of, they're paid the exact same. They're paid by the hour. They do not come up with the herbicide prescription themselves. Our biologist directs them on what herbicide to use and what rate to use it at. And then they get reimbursement for what they used. They have to turn in their receipts and also a record of what they used. So they're turning back in a record that should match the prescription that our biologist gave them. And if they didn't, it'd be denied. So if they were, we try to set up a situation where there's no incentive for them to overspray, because if they did overspray and the biologist said, well, I told you to use this rate, this is double that, well, they don't get paid. And yeah, they would lose that money that they fronted to get that material in the first place. And in terms of training and education, sometimes we hear people think that these are random people that are out there and they're not trained at all, but we do require everyone within our contracts. We require every applicator to hold an applicator's license. And in order to do that, you have to also get continuing education credits. And that means that the applicators that work under our contracts have to go to these trainings and conferences and be in the room and listen to talks such as the one I'm giving, all the way up to research level presentations on specific aquatic plant management research. So the bar is really high for the education that they have to have. And our contract also requires additional training for any misconduct, and we have that very broad so that we can pretty much tell them what training they have to take and how long they have to be taken off the work cycle if there is any misconduct or bad service. All right, and I think that's everything I have for you. This is a picture that is on Lake Okeechobee, and this is a great example of what we are aiming for in our management, a nice, healthy, balanced native ecosystem.
All right. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate your presentation. And if you could, so we could kind of take a few questions or comments and thoughts on this. We really appreciate getting updated on that. There has been a lot of concerns over particularly recent years about this situation. So we'll start looking at the audience. We'll start over here with Diane and then.
Hi, I'm Diane Goldberg, and I'm the Conservation Chair with St. Lucie Audubon and Conservation Alliance of St. Lucie. I just wanted you to repeat what the product was that you're using on torpedo grass.
The product, I think there were a couple of products. I'd have to get back to you on that, but I believe one of them was sethoxidin.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I,
Oxidin?
I believe one of them was sethoxidin, but I know there are a couple that they used for that project.
Thank you.
All right. We have another question over here, comment. Jim, you had some comment question.
Yes.
Can you
I was
stand up?
looking at your graph there, showing that they're in the pause year, that you were saying that the plant went up. It actually, you had 250% increase. Is that correct?
I'm not sure of the increase percentage, but yeah, I can show that graph.
Okay, 400% from 2019 statewide to 2023. Is that correct?
This is a graph that's just like Okeechobee. It went from 250 acres up to a peak of over 3,600.
Did you include the giant cattail and Carolina willow treatments by Aries on your graph there? Is it all IPM with applied aquatics and aquatic vegetation control?
This example is just about floating plants. It's an example for the proactive management, that strategy showing why it's important.
On the 454 schedule of operation, showing the payments out to the contractors with Applied Aquatics, and up in North Florida, the Florida Environmental Consultants, I'm showing them getting paid $4,885.05 a gallon for Basilicor, which you commonly use on Lake Okeechobee.
They don't get paid for any herbicide. They get reimbursed, so they show their
Well, that's not true.
It is
That's
true.
not true, because y'all pay $4,417.88 a gallon for it, and strangely, AVC is only charging $4,200 something a gallon. The little company is charging less than what the state's paying for it. You aware of that?
Yeah. So if we have big quantities that need to go somewhere, sometimes we buy that from our office because it is most cost effective. But if it's for smaller treatments, we allow them to purchase it up front, show us their receipt, and then we reimburse them to the penny that they spent for that. It's just a reimbursement. And yes, they might not be able to get it for the same price in the Panhandle that somebody got it from the store down south. So I'm aware that there are discrepancies, not discrepancies, but there are differences.
Applied, the biggest company,
Price.
the biggest company is actually the biggest in Florida, and they treat more plant than anybody on the planet, hands down. But they're charging you $4,885.05 a gallon, but you're only paying $4,418 a gallon for it. So that's a big difference. I could go on with $250 for gallium panoxylum.
Yes. Again,
$20 on Diquat, $20 on formazoxine, 20-something dollars or more on carfentrazone.
yes. Again, if
Can
I buy it in bulk, I can get it at a lower price, but then I have to ship it. So that cost comes into play as well. So if it's a smaller treatment, yes, they are allowed to purchase it, show me the receipt, we reimburse for that, and sometimes that price is a little higher than what I can get it for, but I saved the money of having to send it all the way across the state. So that's the reason why you see different prices with these, because sometimes they buy it themselves and get reimbursed for it, and that does end up working out most cost effective for the state.
Okay.
Well, you are aware, I'll give just one more question. You are aware that, that you brought up the insect thing there. The lion's share of your pesticides you use, or herbicides, if you want to call them that, or say that they're toxic to invertebrates, including what you're using in there to kill the cattail and stuff, formazoxine and Mazapir. Are you aware that that's you're killing insects and snails and everything else when you're putting that stuff in the habitat to do snail kite restoration?
Yeah, we don't use a Mazapir on. Are you talking about this example? We don't use Mazapir on hydrilla.
No, you don't. You don't have hydrilla in Lake Okeechobee. I'm talking about.
So you're talking about torpedo grass.
I'm talking about cattail and Carolina willow treatments. You use mostly a Mazapir, occasionally a Mazamox, but flumazoxine, Flumagard, the brand name on the one you use.
Yeah,
Those are toxic to invertebrates like snails that the snail kites eat. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of. I mean, we can look at specific labels and talk about those at another
Okay.
time.
Well,
but again,
I'll let some other people talk here, and I will send these people over here if they give me their information, some of the stuff I brought up.
Yeah,
Good details on that information. So
yeah, the important thing is, in terms of insects, is that this plant in its native range supports a ton of insects. So we want to put, and when it's here, it does not. Our native plants support a ton of insects. We want to make sure that we have native plants that support that. So yes, sometimes you have to treat an area and not have plants there for a year or two before you can get the plants back. But it's very important to build back what's going to be the best benefit for our wildlife in the end. You can't accept this monoculture of torpedo grass to exist because ultimately that's very low quality habitat for all the things that we're trying to support.
I think the summary of the concern is that chemical treatments to be toxic to invertebrates and other animals that are incidental to the vegetation that you're treating. So the concern is right there that they're not only labeled and applied to the label and stuff, but to making sure those treatments are not toxic to either initially or even after they've been applied and they're residual for a long time. We're real concerned about the rest of the biota, of course, in that system. We'll go to Casey, and then we have another question here, and let me know. Casey?
Thanks, Alex. Casey Darling-Niffen, Rivers Coalition board member. Can you speak to how the nutrient loading in the lake impacts the spread of invasives?
Yes, to somewhat, or to some degree. That's mostly something that DEP and other water quality groups handle, but in terms of invasive plants, it does, make them grow faster when they have more nutrients present. And yeah, it can exacerbate the problem.
Thanks. Good question. Next there, and then we'll come over here to Newton. Go ahead.
I have a question about the soil. You mentioned that before it's even released into the water or sprayed, they have to prove that the half-life, it breaks down. So is there any soil testing that shows the compounds after they've been broken down, or if that there is in fact any residual herbicide or pesticide left over?
Right. Yeah. Yes. So in the labeling process, when these products are up for review, they have to turn in a lot of different studies that do exactly that. And we have, in the past, a couple of times, just to reassure people, done studies to show them that there's nothing in the soil. We did that on Istapoga last in, I think it was 2017, somewhere between 2017 and 2019. To demonstrate that these things are not persisting in the soil. But if you look at any of the products, they're going to have a suite of research that's associated with them for the labeling process. And those types of studies are included in that.
That's great. Good question. Go over here to.
Newton Cook, United Waterfowlers. This subject you could spend a week on, and nobody's.
We don't have a week, Newton, so
Yeah, I know that.
we
And
got a few more
I'm not
minutes.
going, I'm not going
Thank
to
you,
speak
though.
on it.
Thanks.
But
Yeah.
touch on it. 25 years ago, 20 years ago, I was on Lake Okeechobee, Iraq, after 3 or 4 hurricanes had flipped the lake. Ted Guy sat right next to me. What a wonderful guy. I learned a lot 25 years ago. There are 3 agencies that manage this lake. Corps of Engineers, mostly the levels, FWC, as you see here today, and the South Florida Water Management District. 2 years ago, Lake Okeechobee lost its status in the top 10 bass fishing lakes, dropped right out of the top 10. Just a month ago, Lake Okeechobee was declared the dirtiest lake in the United States. We have the dirtiest lake in the United States. It started off 25 years ago, not so bad till hurricanes flipped it. Those 3 agencies are the direct responsibility for the destruction of Lake Okeechobee. And now we have a real mess on our hand. And until we get our act together, the lake's going to get worse and worse. And where does the water for the lake come to? Right here. Lake Okeechobee doesn't even have a management committee. Can you imagine that? Escapoca he was talking about had. Now they do have, the FWC has an annual meeting on, just had it a week or so ago. And we got a lot of technical stuff. What we got was, and listen, I don't criticize the young man, a dissertation on the particle size of the muck in the bottom of the lake. Who cares? Because the simple thing is, we got to get the muck out of the bottom of the lake. All of it, or as much as we can reasonably. And we've got people working on the particle size, not a single person working on how to get the muck out of the lake. Not one. Not one.
That's a good point.
And Lake Okeechobee needs 3 things: cleaning the water up before it goes in the lake, getting the muck out of the lake, and then a structure at the bottom of the lake that will do 18,000 CFS and not have to send the water out to St. Lucie. Do you realize we only have a structure of 6,000 CFS to move water south out of the lake? How many times have you people said, move the water south, move the water south, move the water? Can't move it south. We got a little bit of structure down here. Irma sent 30,000 CFS in the top of the lake. The little storm in 1916 sent 18,000 CFS into the lake. And we have a 6,000. We need a committee for that lake meeting 3 times a year, co-chaired by the FWC, the district,
3 agencies.
and the FWC, and the Corps of Engineers. That's what I'm working for really hard to get.
Good.
Thank all of y'all.
Thank you, Newton. Thanks. All right.
If I could just touch on one thing.
Question back here. Go ahead, Andy, real quick. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Just Mr. Cook mentioned that article that came out that said that Lake O was the dirtiest lake in the country. It is true, very true, that Lake O has its challenges, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But that one article in particular came from lake.com, which is an Airbnb style website. It was not a study done by scientists, and they did their criteria. I'll give you one example. Their criteria included things like pH. They said a pH of 7 is good. Anything that's not 7 and that deviates from that, we're going to say is bad. Well, when plants photosynthesize, they bring the pH up. So according to them, if you have more plants in your water body, you have a dirtier lake. So I know a lot of people are seeing this article. I just want everybody to be cautious with that one, because those were the type of criteria that were used to determine its status in their rankings.
Thanks. Thanks for addressing that. We do have another 2 quick questions. We got one online. Carol
Carol.
Leonard. Go ahead.
Yes, I put a question in the chat about, do you use these good chemicals on areas near here, like the Savannah's Recreation Area and Blue Cypress Lake?
I believe in Savannah's that would be managed by the parks at DEP. I think they would most likely do that. I think we have in the past helped them out a couple of times. It's not one of our routine areas. And sorry, what was the other area you asked
Blue
about?
Cypress Lake.
Blue
Okay.
Cypress, we do management there. It's not one that really sticks up high in my mind, but.
Okay, great. We'll take one more from Blake real quick. All right.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for your presentation. I'm Blake Faulkner. I'm just a Stewart City resident. What I wanted you to do is, if you could, elaborate on what happened in 2019 that led to the pause in aquatic weed control and other weed control all over the state, and what that meant for certain lakes like Lake Apopka and controlling hydrilla. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, it was at the time a decision was made within our agency to do a lot of work to go and have a bunch of public meetings. So they decided to pause our program while we did that, and then pick it back up after we had made those rounds. In terms of other lakes and their control, we had a lot of those same issues like what I showed you on that graph, where we got behind on a lot of work, and it made us have to do a lot more to catch back up again. Apopka in general, I don't remember anything. Nothing comes to mind that really sticks out that was out of the ordinary. In terms of the hydrilla management, the hydrilla didn't really start growing there until 2019. Around 2018, the native plants started coming back, and then hydrilla joined in its really prolific growth around 2019 and really took off in 2020.
Thanks, Alex. We got one more, and then we really got to move on. So hurry, Merritt Matheson, go ahead. Turn on your mic so they can hear you. There you go. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Merritt Matheson, president of Indian River Keeper. And I want to know if you could give me the percentage breakdown of what is chemically used, herbicides on the lake versus mechanically harvested and removed from the lake. And then if you could talk a little bit about, have there been any studies for nitrogen and phosphorus uptake from the plants you're trying to manage? And then what happens to that nitrogen phosphorus if they're, one, removed from the lake, or two, let to die in the lake and broken back down into muck?
So Merritt's with 3 questions into one there. So
I'll go backward.
He's very sharp guy. Yeah. Okay.
So with these floating plants, I believe they're over 96% water. They do, like any plant, they are holding some nutrients, but it's not at the levels that are typically, you don't see a big difference when you remove them, like we'd want to see in terms of maybe some alternative methods for reducing nutrients. But yes, that does get re-released into the water, but the goal is to have our native plants fill those spaces back in and not being taken over by those invasive plants. And then you asked about the percentage. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it's largely herbicide work, and for our program anyway. And then for habitat restoration, there'd be a lot more mechanical work because you're transforming big areas. And like I said in my presentation, for harvesting, you have to have the area pretty much already a monoculture of invasive species, which is what we're trying to prevent. So we do a lot of preventative work. We don't ever want it to get to the point to where it's already taken over the whole area and now we have to come in, because we don't want those plants to impact our native plants. And then we also don't want to have to harvest up our native plants and kill those plants. We want to keep the native plants and promote their growth and their densification. Was there a third question? I'm sorry.
Well, that was kind of the two were basically how much the percentage mechanical versus chemical treatments, and the other was about what those nutrient uptakes. And then the last question he had on that 1 and 3, and that he did, yes, 3 and 1 was what happens when you harvest those plants out, and what happens to those nutrients?
Yeah, so
if
that is,
they have uptake.
Yeah, that is one advantage to when you do have material to harvest, is that you can remove the nutrients. A lot of times we don't have places to put that material, so it ends up going on an island inside the lake anyway. So it in some very select scenarios that can be an option. But again, we don't want to allow the invasive plants to get to the level where they've already killed our native plants to where we have to have that situation. But for floating island management and other scenarios, we do employ those harvesters, and sometimes we shred it in place as well, which doesn't remove it, but it's another mechanical means.
Well, I appreciate, Alex, you giving us a talk, and appreciate the information. Obviously, it went a long time here because it's a real good concern, and it's a major issue for not only the Lake Okeechobee, but all the waters around our state, and how you manage aquatic plants in our area. So I want also to offer up to that we'll put your contact information on our website for this presentation. So if people have follow-up questions or follow-up comments and concerns, they can get directly in touch with you. Is that all right?
Yeah. Thank you all for the
opportunity. And also his presentation will be on there too. So good. So Merritt, let's get in touch with this gentleman here. All right. Okay, let's thank Alex. Appreciate him for doing that, coming online. All right, so we're going to get updated from our government and agency updates. We'll start with Martin County, go to City of Stewart and the district and others. So instead of John being with us, we've got Amy Eason with us. So Amy.
All right, thank you very much. Amy Eason, Environmental Resource Engineer at Martin County. So today I wanted to just kind of share with you what we've experienced in the past month, our tidal events with the king tides that we've had. So I'm going to have them flip the slide. So flip. If you know that king tides typically occur when the moon is the closest to the earth, and in Martin, flip. I don't know who's, yeah, I'm going really short. All right, so this is a graph that is given by South Florida Water Management District. There's about 6 king tides. We're getting towards the end of the season. There's one that's coming up in November 6th time period. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that we're getting close to the end of the king tide season, as well as we're getting to the end of the rainy season, where both of those occur. We get a lot of flooding. So go ahead and flip. So we do have a website that if you are interested in what the tidal events are occurring around Martin County, you can go to checkthewaves.com. There are several stations within the county that you can actually see where the water levels are within the river. We have one that's on Mockingbird Lane, where you can see that the elevation had gotten really close to about 2 elevation. We had Merritt Lane, which went over to like 2.5. which is down in our South County. And then we have a station that's really close to the water control structure. That's the St. Lucie settlement that we look at, and we were at about 2.5 feet. So, I mean, just be aware of the elevation. So flip again. Here's near St. Lucie settlement. You can see about 1.4. That poor house is getting some water in it. Next. Pine Tree Lane, which is up in Palm City. You can see the river just coming over the road right there at Pine Tree Lane. Flip. Shepherd Park here in Stewart. This was lovely. I was riding my bike and got pictures of this event. We were about 2.5 feet there. Flip again. Mockingbird Lane, this road was underwater about 1.5 feet, and we're really close to this. Is the lowest house in the lot. Flip. Again, Merritt Way, this is our South County. Elevation was about 2.7, 2.8 there. Flip. And then Bathtub Beach, we had some erosion that occurred between October 8th and October 16th. We had to bring some fill out there to allow people to have beach access. And I think that's my last slide there. So just be aware that we're at the end of King's tide season. And I believe in a presentation I gave not about a couple of months ago, I mentioned that our king tides presently today, 2.5, 2.8. So we are very close to what those tides are. So thank you very much. I will let you go.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate your reporting. Oh, okay.
One more thing. I will be at the air show. When I ended my presentation 2 months ago, we were doing our adaptation plan. So come see me. I'll have a booth, and we're looking for feedback.
All right, Mark Kelly, thank you. And thanks, Dr. Elizabeth Kelly's here too. We'll go to City of Stewart. I don't know that we had, Ben Hogarth has kind of moved on, and we don't have a necessarily appointee. We have spoken with Ruth Holmes, who is the environmental attorney, and she's met with a lot of us in the Rivers Coalition to kind of determine her directions and things moving forward. Commissioner Collins or others from city, did you want to update anything? We're all good. Thanks again appreciate everything. We'll move on to Water Management District. So I don't know that we have anybody except Sherry. Please come forward. Come on up, come on up, come on. No, you gotta come up, come on. So if you all know, Sherry has replaced Kathy LaMartina, who was here for many, many years. She's our regional regional director here.
Just want to let you know our next board meeting is November 13th, 9 a.m. at headquarters in Palm Beach, and we'd love to have you all attend or tune in. You can also visit our website at sfwmd.gov and read about all of our updates. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on. So we've got, we heard from FWC. The Corps of Engineers, as I mentioned, is not available today. Unfortunately, we were really counting on Colonel Bowman being here to really kind of give us updates on things that are going on with the C-44, C-2324 projects. I do want to mention, that there are projects underway with the Indian River Lagoon South program. Of course, you've heard about C-2324 on the North Reservoir. STA project is being done. They just let me know, I think Drew from the district let me know that there are contracts going out for the South Reservoir for C-2324. So those two are underway to continue. And I asked about, well, how does this shut down, or how is it going to affect the MOU, MOA that they entered into with the state back in July about fast tracking. And this is, Drew said, as long as the funding continues for the state levels, we can hopefully see the progress moving forward on these couple of projects within our watershed. It's just going to be questionable on the larger projects, such as the EA Reservoir and other projects going forward. So we've got to kind of keep our eyes open for that. We'll move on to Lake Okeechobee. Up, does Paul Gray on the line? Paul Gray.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Can you guys hear me?
Good. We certainly can. Thanks.
Okay, great. One of these days I'm going to come over and have lunch with you on the water, but anyway, too busy. So the lake is looks like it's going to top out right around 14 feet this year, and that's actually really, really good for the lake. Another year of low water. The SAV recovery was, as everybody knows, was pretty strong, but it's only about half of what the goals are for the lake. And so another year of low water could really make the plants expand and become much more robust. And so when, higher water levels inevitably come back, they'll be more resilient. So for the lake, it's really good. For the estuary, of course, the lower water gives you guys a bigger buffer. There are concerns about water supply later in the dry season. We'll just have to see how that goes. But for now, everything's pretty good. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for being on it out there at the lake. Next up, we're going to be talking about state and federal legislation, and I'll turn it over to Gil's here today, or he wasn't, but here filling it.
Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Eve Samples with the Rivers Coalition Board and Friends of the Everglades. So Gil Smart is actually coming back from a legislative delegation meeting, which is why he couldn't be with us today. So he sent me a couple of notes on some bills that have been filed that relate to this trend of local government preemption that we've seen coming out of Tallahassee year after year. So just to refresh your memory, session will start in January this year. During election years, the state legislature meets earlier so that they can get out of there and go fundraise for their campaigns earlier. So the two bills that Gil flagged to me that we're concerned about are House Bill 105. This is local government actions. The sponsor is Representative Brackett out of Vero Beach. And this basically creates a way for developers to sue over enforcement of local government rules. So it proposes that any person or business subject to a local government, quote, enforcement action that's thought to be arbitrary or unreasonable can appeal. So the local government has 30 days to respond to that appeal. And if officials miss the deadline, the person who brings the appeal can sue. And if they win, they can be awarded up to $50,000 plus attorney fees. So it seems to put quite a burden on local governments. And what does arbitrary mean anyway? Something to keep an eye on. It's on our list for sure at Friends of the Everglades. The other bill that Gil flagged is Senate Bill 208, Land Use and Development Regulations. This one's filed by Senator Stan McLean out of Ocala. He's filed some bills that have not been good in terms of responsible development in recent years, and this one is along those lines. It redefines compatibility to mean that any land use within the same land use category, so long as it doesn't create undue or adverse impacts, may not require denial of or condition or delay of the approval of the residential development. Then it goes on. So basically, townhomes could be built next to larger homes. There's some compatibility questions here. It effectively prohibits the creation of new architectural design standards or design review boards at the local level. So we'll keep monitoring this one too. We're at the end of October here. We have a couple more months of committee meetings, and we'll continue to keep you all posted at these meetings. Go to everglades.org to check out the bills as they pop up.
Great, thanks, Eve. And as she mentioned, the local delegation meetings, these are our local representatives and senators, state senators to be here. The next one is on the 29th, and a week from today, it's on 29th, Wednesday, a week from Wednesday. So it's a St. Lucie County delegation meeting. It's in the Indian River State College. So I encourage people to attend these meetings, get involved. You have chances to talk to the local delegation. But also as the committees go through and stuff, we're tracking some legislative priorities that our organization and other organizations have submitted to these legislative delegation to say, hey, these are our priorities. And of course, from us, it's mostly about the water issues and what's being affected on the St. Lucie or Indian River Lagoon and Lake Okeechobee and the whole watersheds here. So that's our concerns. So moving on to coalition reports, we got River Kids and some local issues. Let me give it over to Casey Niffen about River Kids.
Thank you. The River Kids are really excited to present in November for the Martin County, Florida Native Plant Society meeting. So I hope you all will join and see their talk about how native plants and native plant restorations can really improve our water quality. I just have two things for everyone if you have River Kids in your life. We participated back in May in a program called Eyes on Seagrass and the IRL. And that was something where you could go out and you could report either presence or absence of seagrass in the Indian River Lagoon. And this is really important because we know that our state agencies can't always get to every spot, but we go to a lot of them. So if you're interested, they're collecting data for that program all year round. It doesn't just have to be during that blitz that we participated in May. So please check out Eyes on Seagrass in the IRL. That's through UF IFAS Extension and the Sea Grant program. And another thing is that the Future Wave Makers Challenge has just opened. This is a video program that kids can submit, and they can talk about what they love about the Indian River Lagoon or our other waterways. They can present facts on ocean creatures. It's a really great way to get them involved and get them thinking about why they enjoy this this environment so much. So thank you so much, and please let us know. We do have a new River Kids email, riverkids@riverscoalition.org. So please email us if you have a river kid that wants to get involved.
On your, I'm glad to see you're doing seagrass restoration. I think I found the smoking gun on what's killing off eastern oysters and seagrasses statewide. In your area here, in the St. Lucie River, has been two chemicals have been put in there. Bacillochlor. Bacillochlor is toxic to marine life. Another one, Aquatic, is a copper sulfate. And you remember the fish kill up there recently? That was Aquatic. That was dumped into there. I got 670 violations in Lake Okeechobee alone with bacillochlor. It's going, it lasts 46.6 days in the water column. It's toxic to invertebrates, particularly marine. It's not to go in there. All of these are label violations. When they put it directly, bacillochlor directly into that. Are you aware of that? Any of that?
So thank you.
I think you
Thank you,
need to
Jim.
look
So
in.
for-
I think you need to look into it. And I have a lot of documentation on this. If you would like, give me your email address. I'll give it to you.
I think we'll work with you on a task group kind of level to kind of understand more about this chemistry inputs into the system. But appreciate that, and appreciate River Kids getting our youth involved for sure. Thank you, Casey. So we go to some local issues in water quality. As I mentioned, the governing board on their October 9th meeting had a big meeting with all the Northern Everglades and Estuaries protection plans. That's all three of those watersheds, which we talk about, Okeechobee, St. Lucie, and Caloosahatchee watersheds. And they had their FDEP there and also FDACS, the Department of Agriculture. And we're still not meeting. And there's some of these that you've heard me talk here at this meeting that it's been 3 to 5 times higher than the total maximum daily loads. And they're going through this BMAP process update. And a lot of us are thinking about challenging this 2025 BMAP that updates here. We've been in our basin management action plan since 2013. It's supposed to be completed and finished, and the reduction's all done. So we meet the TNBL by 2028. And we're already 12 years into this, and they're not meeting these milestones of reduction. So all that phosphorus nitrogen chemistry that comes off into our watershed is not meeting our total maximum daily load. We keep bringing this up and we keep focusing on that, particularly St. Lucie County. So for instance, in our St. Lucie watershed, and this is from the district data, that right now the loading for total nitrogen is about 1,134 metric tons of nitrogen. We're supposed to be at 516 metric tons of nitrogen to meet the TMDL. So we got a long ways to go to reduce that, and they're not meeting those reduction goals. We're thinking about the enforceability of the BMAPs through the final order that allows enforcement of that. So we're moving that forward. On a local condition, local water quality, we're seeing a lot of concern, of course, with the local basin runoff that we talked about. Our weekly maps are showing in the South Fork particularly, we're getting some low water quality, and we do that graph over the year. And we're seeing it pick back up a little, but you can see the high peak on the right-hand side. That's when we had a major kind of outflow from that heavy rains that we got not too long ago. So there's big concerns. Yeah. So Eve's asking a good question about king tides and how they harm the river. So basically king tides and storm surge. We've had a lot of storm, as you know, offshore, large waves and surge pushing that tidal water up into the system. But it's also met with the outflow from all the rain and that's coming, rain down and runoff into the local watershed. So it's more so the rain and runoff that's affecting it. The king tides, as Amy has pointed out, are starting to flood areas and of course local docks and riverfront properties, and particularly right up the canal at St. Lucie Settlement that you mentioned. If that gets up to three feet in elevation, you're flooding those communities. And it's actually required in the Lake Okeechobee 2008 schedule. They're not allowed to make releases if it gets up that high. So tidal influence is huge during this storm surge and king tide events. Yep. It's a good point that the debris coming back after you get a flood condition. Real quick.
Yeah, when the tides come in, they'll come in and pick up some of those pollutants and then bring it back out. But also think about the canal ends where you have a lot of those boats and there's dead zones that happen. So the tides come in. It may not come on the land, but it actually comes in and pulls that stuff out. So
Flushing out.
it's flushing out.
Flushing out a lot of chemicals and chemistry. And in the back, we got one question quick. Got a quick question. Come on up if you can, so people online can see you. Here we go. Just give us your name.
Mark Walsh is my name. How would the septic tanks in those areas be affected by king tides? Being that the area is flooded 3 feet or 2.5 feet, and those roads are on septic, and the groundwater came up as well as the ocean water.
Good question. Good question about septic.
You're absolutely correct. So as king tides come in, your groundwater's raising. If there's septic tanks by the water, more of those pollutants can come out. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
So that's another big concern that we have there. So excellent. And Todd, anything on seagrass, or we want to talk about seagrass coverage? I know you might have been out there recently, or
Am I on? No, unfortunately, I have not been out on the water in a long time. Been
to see inside the inlet there.
busy going to Gainesville to watch my Gators try to play football, but not successfully. So you can see my screen there. So I have a couple of things that might illustrate, and I can't really do this with one hand, so hold on here. Just want to zoom in real quick. So to illustrate a couple of things we've been talking about today. So this, if you're looking at the banner on the Ion Lake website, this little thing's yellow right now. It goes yellow when the canal is out of its optimum range. So it's out of its optimum range right now. It's kind of low. I noticed that they just opened up 308 like yesterday or today to probably bring the canal.
It's about 50 CFS.
I'll show you some of that. But when you go on there, when the tides are high, it turns red. And so I saw you give a funny look when he was saying 3 feet, because you were talking about 2 feet and something. And this is the stuff I have to deal with these websites. I'm using the Army Corps' NGVD, which is the old datum. And so in the documents, what Mark was alluding to is that the tides get up to 3 feet NGVD. We had a meeting on that a long time ago.
Yeah.
They can't use S308. Like they cannot make discharges from S308 because it's already flooding the neighborhoods up there in the South Fork. Now everyone's moving over to this NAVD 88, which is a different datum of how we measure to the center of the earth, basically. And so that's why these numbers are a little different. But that what I was going to point is that was going red on and off all the last couple of weeks because the tides are up above 3 feet NGVD. So looking at the lake, we were talking earlier about how the lake is looking good and that it might top off at about 14 feet. This updates daily, and that slope right here is kind of flattening.
We're at about 13.93 now.
Yeah, we're at 13.88 as of 10 a.m. this morning, which is 2.19 feet lower than we were at on this day last year. And one of the questions, and when we were talking about the phosphorus loads and stuff in the lake, how does that affect the aquatics? I'm also curious as to if we had this record, great 2025, is that because the lake's 2 feet lower than it was in 2024? But we've been in this recovery envelope that they targeted early in their year now for 211 days non-consecutively. So that's why the lake is probably doing really well. And then let's look at a couple of graphs, a couple of new stuff that I have on here too. Mark, you wanted me to show people this, if I can get all these Zoom things out of my screen. This is a live graph of the C44 basin. So this kind of shows you like the discharges that happened earlier in the year. And this summarizes all the acre feet going into our reservoir, coming out of our reservoir. And so if you scroll down, this is a live shot of our reservoir. So and I guess I can't scroll.
This is the C44 reservoir, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
the
see it
bottom
on
there,
there.
but
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah.
weird. Oh, you know why?
Yeah.
The scale, because I'm zooming in the scale, the graph
Right,
changed.
right.
I mean, it looks pretty drastic when you do this, but
Oh, yeah.
that's when you zoom in. But this is the reservoir, and so you can see there's this 3 foot minimum storage that they have to kind of keep in there. So they're below the 3 foot minimum. And going back to the intakes, you can see where they were filling it during these rains. So that was all potential discharge to the St. Lucie River.
But they were storing it in the reservoir.
But
in
they're
the
pumping it,
C44
they're pumping it into the reservoir, and now the
What's the
reservoir
elevation now?
kind of topped out as of right, this instant at 11:15 a.m. It's at 9.43 feet. So it's starting to drop off, probably just from evaporation and a little bit of leakage. And so if you go to a water year, and we're in water year 2026, the way they do it, and my numbers are off. Oh, there they go. They just refreshed. So it shows right here that I was looking for the inflows into the reservoir, 100% from the basin, 31,000 acre feet. So when you saw that big thing going up, that was 31,000 acre feet of water that they put in our reservoir that could have gone into the river.
Right.
So not only are you, whether or not it's filtering it or not, reducing loads, zero water is zero load from that source.
And as that water comes out of the reservoir, it's going to go through the STAs first. To
And so,
filter.
if you want to see that too.
Well, yeah, we might move on.
Okay. But the middle of the graph right there, that's the STAs outputs. And then the
Just the
salinity.
whole story of this, if you want the science on this and really get into the data, I mean, this is the man right here.
But I just want to show on the king tides.
He's great.
Eve had the question about the king tide.
Yeah.
My observation is usually when we have a king tide, it'll up the salinity, and the salinity in the river gets better.
Right.
But yeah, with all this runoff we had, we were down into the danger zone, killing oysters there.
We're now down below that too. The last 30 days, we've dropped down to below 10 parts per thousand here at Roosevelt Bridge.
Because I always get the hook at the end of the meeting. There's a bunch of satellite imagery in here that has all the, this is October 13th. So born and raised here, used to be a ton of seagrass out there. Mark was talking about it was knee deep out there when we used to fish. We used to get discharges back then. I mean, I can remember walking through my neighborhood after an October storm as a kid. But the seagrass was still there. So it really does make me wonder, if it was loading in there, what else is killing this grass out here? And so these images go all the way back to when you can see some grass. And then just the offshore stuff too, real quick. Like that's the plume off on the reef, and what's going into the
Is that
reef.
recent or is that?
That's the 13th. That's when we're getting all that rain. And I did a zoom out so you can kind of see. You can see the Fort Pierce Inlet plume out. That's us. Jupiter Inlet a little bit, and this is all that that stir up that happens when we get these storms that come through here. It's pretty wild. You can see it out in the Bahamas and out into the Gulf Stream.
Isn't that amazing? And we can see that plume, and that, of course, cuts the light level from reaching the reef, the coral reef south of the inlet, and that coral reef can't survive in that condition. And as well as it drops the salinity, if it goes below 32 parts per thousand, it starts to stress out the coral reef too. So good report on some local conditions. We had another. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And when I know, so it's unfortunate. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah. It's unfortunate. Direct impacts to it. Yeah. All right. Well, quick comments and we're going to close her up. We got Indian River Keeper report's not here. Jim's not here. He's in the hospital, I think, working surgery. So everybody pray for him. Quick question. Go ahead, Michael or Mitchell. Yeah, Mitch.
So I just put in context, like if you look around the globe and also the state, coral is disappearing for a lot of reasons,
Yeah.
but just want to also think about how ocean temperatures and acidification have increased. And that's the major driver of coral death.
Yes.
So, but local as well.
Yep, ocean temps warming up have created a real problem for reefs, the coral bleaching, as well as coral tissue disease, soft coral tissue disease, which has come up into our reef. And then the other, as you mentioned, ocean acidification is our oceans are getting more acidic. Yes, Casey, another.
Sorry, one more comment.
Yep.
Because the gentleman in the back brought up septic. Well, no, he brought up septic systems and the impacts of king tide. So I went on. If you have never been on Florida Healthy Beaches, it is a great resource.
Yeah.
And if we have river kids going into the water, please check that before you go out, especially into the causeway. We do have 2 or 3 poor and moderate readings from last week. So that is a measure of enterococcus, which is, fecal bacteria that is in our waterways. Definitely could be from the septic input. It could be from other runoff as well, but good to check those. Good to have that before your kids go in the water or yourself, especially if you have open wounds.
Yeah, what Casey's mentioned is the bacterial levels usually monitored by our local Mark County Health Department as a part of the Florida Health Department, and they basically put those warnings out there. Not all the times can you see them, whether the Roosevelt Bridge or the boat ramps or other areas. So when you're going out, check this website. What again was it, Casey? Florida Healthy Beaches, and we'll put that on our Rivers Coalition website too. Unfortunately, Jim's not here. Any other member announcements or comments? I know there's some stormwater up in St. Lucie County, some resilience through stormwater programs coming up. So appreciate you attending those. Any other updates from Martin County as well? Diane, go ahead. Member comment.
The
Question.
report that we got from Alex, I'm going to be giving a lecture for St. Lucie Audubon at the Oxbow Eco Center on Thursday, November 6th at 7 p.m. And it's in reference to using native plants to bring butterflies and birds to your yard. And we'll be specifically talking about the local natives, and we'll be able to supply you with some seeds and plants. Trees mostly would be wonderful for our birds. You're welcome to all come.
So when is that again?
On Thursday, November 6th at 7 p.m. Oxbow Eco Center is on St. James.
So we'll put that down on our website too.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. All right. So, all right. Any other member comments or announcements about stuff? Hey, thank you all for coming today. The November meeting is on November 20, I believe. Is that right? November 20. And we're going to be talking probably about legislative conditions and advocacy during our legislative session, both state and federal. Okay. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.